So, hi and welcome to LawWiser. Today we have a very interesting discussion on hand with us where we would be decoding the Union Budget 2022-23. There's a lot of buzz happening in and around this budget. There's a lot of incentives, a lot of things that have come up, and we thought this would be one of the best ways for our audience to be able to understand which are these key changes and which are these key sectors that have been impacted by this union budget. To discuss this, we have eminent panel with us. We have experts. We have Mr. Rahul Verma. He is Senior Director at Cipla. We have Mr. Abhishek Saxena. He's the co-founding partner of Phoenix Legal. And we have Mr. Jatin Arora. He's the partner of Phoenix Legal. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And let's to start this discussion. There have been a lot of things that have been happening in and around this budget, and our audience is keen to understand. So I'd like to invite, first Abhishek, if you could just give our audience, a minute of overview of regarding this budget.
Thanks, Tanya, for that introduction, and happy to be on this panel. I think before commenting on the budget, I think budget is nothing else but a statement of income and expenditure. And I think if one has that understanding, it would be very easy to appreciate it. And generally, there would not be so much of an interest around the budget in other countries as much as it is in India. And I think it's reduced over the years, but it's important because it's still a capital scarce country. And I think it's important for signaling purposes. So from that perspective, I think I would say it's a great budget in the sense that it lays out a route for development. It sends out nice signals and messaging and intent. And I think it marries the old economy with the new. So there is a significant increase in the infrastructure spending. I think it's gone up by some 35% to 7.5 lakh crores. And at the same time, if you heard the finance minister's speech, I think digital was used some 37 times, technology was used some 25 times. So there is a very strong focus given startup has been such a strong growth sector in India, both in terms of, I think, giving employment, attracting capital, contributing to the growth of the economy. A very strong focus on, I think, technology and digital. And I think, so you heard announcements like drone as a service, digital currency, data centers being granted infrastructure status. So a very strong fillip through the government's messaging that, look, we are here to promote. And at the same time, I think also keeping focus on clean energy, green energy, and increasing allocation to the production-linked incentive scheme. And at the same time, I think also promoting ease of doing business. I don't know how many people saw it, but they're talking about not only just ease of entry into India is important, but also ease of exit. So the finance minister said that they will come up with a new scheme through use of technology to ensure that exits are able to take place within a 6-month time period. So I would say, I think, and one could say that, some sectors were not provided for. Maybe I think there should have been some tinkering with the income tax rates, middle class interest should have been taken care of. But like I said, I think the government is very strongly banking on growth, and that to really take care of, I think, the other issues. And maybe I think they have the fiscal space available with them. Maybe they, depending on how it pans out over the next 6 months, they might come up with some other announcements for sectors which have probably been left out.
Thank you, Abhishek, for that. So, Rahul, do you have some thoughts that you would like to share here?
And thanks, Anya, for giving that opportunity. So, I would also rate this budget is, taking India towards that great maturity that we always speak of. And there's no much tinkering about the renewable tax rate. There's no much tinkering about the corporate tax rate, which gives pretty stable environment for the corporate world to plan their policies and plan their growth according to the stable policy. So that I feel is going to be a great signal going forward, and corporate would always require that stability and the policy focus. And besides that, the focus of the government to provide the PLI incentive for various sectors, including pharma, has been quite a great incentive where over 1,000 to 1,200 crores will be given to pharma selected pharma companies over 12 5 to 6 years is going to be a great incentive. And besides that, what I feel is some policy direction around allowance or disallowance of expenditures on marketing and promotion, which has been given under Section 37(1), which will end up a lot of litigation which is going around in various tribunals and high courts. So that I believe is a good signal wherein the people could focus on growth of the business rather than the litigation. And this updated return thing which has been brought about in Section 139 is also a great a tool to kind of reduce litigation and improve tax certainty, which I believe is largely for a non-corporate taxpayer. But yes, it will help government to kind of settle the disputes rather than taking them on for years and years together. And besides that, I'm also kind of looking at to that enhancement of the period to commence production for the new companies which are set up under 115 BAB by 1 year. That is also a welcome step. This has been requested by the Pharma Association from the government, and it has come at the opportune time to give 1 more year to expand our manufacturing facility. Besides that, there are some provisions which are unexpected, like TDS on business perquisites and the promotions being deployed by many FMCG and pharma and consumer-based companies.
Here's what I found online.
So this is what my takeaway on this, and I feel all these are going to go a long way.
Great, thank you. Jatin, anything to add on?
Just to add to what Abhishek and Rahul have already said, I think the agenda that the government has followed in this budget is continuity in terms of giving the ease of business to the sector here. But I think more than that, continuing the growth agenda from the previous years, more than that, I think the idea is that laying down the foundation for the coming years for the country, and somewhere you have to make a start. So we can keep on saying that it is a 25-year vision and what are we doing for today, but then somebody has to take a start for the next 25 years also. And I think they have taken a very right step in investing in the right sectors and investing in the right areas. As Abhishek has mentioned about the technology, the drone technology, the green side of it. So everywhere, they have taken the steps, and they've shown that they have the vision for taking the country to the next level in the next 25 years. And so I think it's a very, very good budget in terms of the growth orientation of the country, bringing the stability, yes, without doing much of the changes on the tax rate side. We can always, find out some of the areas in every budget to say, these are not, the happy areas, or we are not happy with these situations, or there are still certain areas which the government could have done more. But that's we can do that every year in every budget. But I think from a long-term strategy, it's a very good.
Thank you, Jatin, and very well said. Obviously, there'll be a lot of areas which people will feel that they require some improvement. But then, looking at the highlights now of the budget, so moving there, as Abhishek rightly pointed out, there's been a lot of stress in this budget on the digital side of it. Abhishek, if you can take our audience through these incentives that have been brought about. There's this tax that's been now put on virtual digital assets as well. And along with that, if you can also take our audience through the incentives for startups as well.
Sure. Actually, I'm sure a lot of the Gen Z probably doesn't take the tax as an incentive. Probably, I think, throwing cold water, given that it had become such an easy way to make money with all the film stars. I think advertising on prime time television and front page ads. But I think that is what perhaps government was indirectly trying to, I think, curb. So I think coming back to the specifics, I think it's certainly not I would say a new proposal in that sense. It does certainly add certainty to what was, I guess, the implicitly understood. So even now, lots of people may not have actually been declaring their income while filing their income tax returns, but gains on any asset class, be it virtual or physical or digital, was considered to be taxable under the Indian Income Tax Act. So by, I think, including this in the proposal in the union budget, I think they've just made explicit what was implicit and just added more certainty. And also, I think, an attempt to get an audit trail, because before the introduction of the proposal, one, there was doubt whether it was taxable or not taxable. So some people were voluntarily declaring any gains from trading in cryptocurrency. Others might not have been declaring it on the understanding that, oh, it was not taxable. So one, it adds certainty on the taxability of the gains arising from this. Second was the confusion around, even if people were declaring gains from trading in digital assets, some were declaring it as business income, some would declare it as short-term capital gains, others as long-term capital gains, and then it would be left to the assessing officer to decide whether it was speculative, it was in the nature of asset, and hence entitled to short-term and long-term. So by very clearly stating that, one, it would be taxed at 30% plus surcharge and cesses, and which effectively is the tax rates for winnings and lotteries. Clearly, they are sending a message that they treat it as speculative, income to be speculative in nature. Second, they have not allowed any losses to be set off or for losses to be carried forward, unlike is the case for gains arising or losses arising in case of other asset class. So clearly, while they recognize it as an asset class, they are saying that, look, there is no economic value attached to it, and hence we will tax it at the highest marginal rate, and we will not allow you to carry forward losses. And then they've also introduced a 1% TDS on the turnover on trading done on crypto exchanges. And thereby, I think what they do want to, basically they want to get information now, because the obligation will go on to the crypto exchanges to deduct that tax and deposit that tax with the government. So that leaves not only just an audit trail, but also gives an information to the government on who are people who are engaging in these transactions and what is the value of these transactions. And then by correlating it with whether individuals who are making the requisite income above the threshold are filing returns disclosing that income, they can actually also go after people who are not filing income tax returns. So I think in that sense, the proposal achieves multiple objectives. And I think over the years, the government's objective has been to broaden the tax base by use of technology, by going after undisclosed incomes, or at least to get information about people earning income and not disclosing it in income tax return. So in that sense, it's a good start. It adds certainty. It allows government to, I think, identify who are the people trading and making money and not filing returns. Then there is a question that has been raised around whether it gives legality to the crypto transaction, as the government itself has clarified that the proposal only deals with the tax aspect of it. And it doesn't really confer any legitimacy or legality to transactions in digital assets or cryptocurrency. That is a separate discussion that is already underway. Government has laid out a discussion paper and is considering the regulatory mechanism that should be put in place to decide what and how should crypto be considered. And given that they've also simultaneously made an announcement for a digital currency, a central bank digital currency, I think the thinking of the government seems to be very clear that they might allow it to be traded as an asset class, but for it to rise to the level of currency, I think that some sort of doubt has kind of come in on whether that will happen given the announcement on a digital currency. Sure. So I think as we are all aware, I think anyone who reads the paper and I think who is generally connected with the business world and follows business news, I think startup is really the buzzword. And I think, and it's really also got the government focus. If you picked up the economic survey, which I think comes one day before the budget, a large part of it was dedicated to startup ecosystem in terms of it created 6 million jobs, received so much funding, India created 45 unicorns. And it, of course, very nicely dovetails with, I think, this revolution, the technological revolution or revolution that one is seeing in Indian landscape, and of course, promoting entrepreneurship, which is great. And I think the fact that it has got the government's attention also just shows how much importance government places on this new development that is taking place. And keeping that in mind, I think government, apart from, I think, the digital related announcement, like I mentioned in my opening remarks, that the large part of speech was just focused on digital and technology, specifically to measures that the tax proposals or beneficial measures that are aimed at, I think, promoting participation in startup or giving a fillip to the startup ecosystem would be as follows. So I think the government had announced a tax benefit scheme which was expiring on 31st March 2022, and they've granted an exemption extension of that 10-year period by 1 year, and now that it will expire on 31st March 2023. What the scheme allowed was that if you are a startup incorporated before 31st March 2022, now 31st March 2023, you could get an exemption for any 3 years in a block of 10 years of income tax for that period, provided, of course, the threshold prescribed was 25 crores. So that is one. I think the second key change that has been announced is that they have capped the surcharge that is applicable on long-term capital gains that result from sale of unlisted shares. Now we know that most of the startup funding happens between the stage of when they are set up to the stage of their listing on the stock exchanges. And between that period, they go through multiple rounds of funding and exits, both from the founders as well as the investors. And so far, the cap on so they proposed a 15% cap as regards surcharge on long-term capital gains that arise from sale of unlisted shares. Earlier, this benefit was only available to sale of listed shares in case of gains arising from sale of listed shares in mutual fund units. And with regard to unlisted shares, it was a graded system with the highest, I think, going up to 37.5 or some such number. And as a result of which, I think the effective tax rate, if you're a founder or if you're an investor selling shares of a startup which is at an unlisted stage, I think goes down to, I think, something like a 25.8, and there's approximately a 15% benefit in tax rate. Of course, it applies to high net worth individuals only. I think the slab rate is, I think, about 2 crores. But I think for most of the selling that happens, it's probably above that threshold. And it does kind of encourage people to, I guess, they can use that gains to reinvest in their startup, or I think that money can be channelized to go fund other startups. So that was, I think, the other beneficial provision. Then they have proposed setting up of another funding platform with, I think, 20% contribution from the government. And I think with other private sector crowding in to, I think, promote or expand the avenues of funding available to the startup sector. And then they've also proposed as part of their ease of doing business and improving the funding environment for startups, they've proposed setting up of a panel that will look into the difficulties that are being faced by VC and private equity investor. And government keeps getting feedback from different constituents on the issues and problems that are being faced by them. So it's a welcome measure, I think, also, and it sends a message that look, government is cognizant of the issues being faced by the stakeholders in the system, and it's willing to address them. So overall, and of course, like I said, there are broad-based general announcements with regard to tech and digital, and as we know, most of the startups are just using tech as a platform. It could be fintech, it could be health tech, it could be your payment wallets, it could be any other. And I think there are various other measures. I think the e-passport, for example. I think again, there will be various startups, e-passport using a blockchain technology, drone as a service, data centers being granted infrastructure status, which makes, I think, cross-border lending, ECB available to them, other income tax benefit available to them. So overall, I think, again, like I said, I think messaging from the government is very important. And I think really picking up a sector for focus and giving them specific benefits sends a very right signal to, I think, promotion of entrepreneurship and to the youngsters in India. And I think we know that India is a young country. I think the largest proportion of population is in that, I think, 18 to whatever, 34 or 35 bracket. And that's really the age also where in most cases, the startup founders are. So I think, yeah, overall good set of measures for the startup sector.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek, for actually taking our audience through in detail with all these, new aspects that have come in. So, and that takes us, from startups being obviously a lot of, it has a lot of attention of our budget. At the same time, the other one is the MSME sector, which a lot of stress has also been given, considering they are also another chunk of it that employs a lot of people as well, churning out a lot of revenue as well. So Jatin, if you can just take our audience through the key highlights relating, that have come in relation to the MSME sector, some of which, that have been like, for example, reduction in custom duties of raw materials, revamping the credit guarantee trust, for MSMEs, and also the extension of ECLGS. So if you can just take our audience through, all the incentives with regard to MSMEs.
Sure. So, Tanya, we all know that since the time the COVID hit India and the entire economy was, badly impacted by this whole pandemic situation, one sector which got the most impact of it was the MSME sector, and how they have struggled in this last 2-3 years is in front of all of us. The higher input costs, the contracted demand, and movement of the labor and non-availability of skilled labor, and they have actually suffered through each and every possible problem that an industry can face. On top of that, the working capital problems that they face because of all these issues, and drying up of the credit lines from various funding institutions also was a big challenge for them. Now, all these things were addressed by the government earlier also by giving them this, extended credit line guarantee scheme, and they got the benefit of it. The government took various measures and steps during the last 1 year also to give them, good amount of funding so that they can, boost, their growth, and they can actually spring back into the aspect of bringing the production back on stage and giving them more opportunities to grow. But the external environments were something which were again hitting them bad. So the increase in the raw material cost was becoming a big concern, and along with that, the custom duties which were there on import of raw materials, which becomes a cost for the every industry because they are not creditable and has to be passed on to the consumers as part of the cost, and which thereby raises the cost of the finished products. And all these things were making them incompetitive in the export side also. And now what the government has done is the government has taken a couple of measures in that. One, for the MSME sector in general, they have taken note of the fact that the input costs are increasing, and therefore they need to give a support to the MSME sector. to get the raw material at a cheaper cost. So therefore, they have reduced the import duties on various key raw materials, and specifically in the metal side, I mean, they have reduced the duties. They have also extended the custom duty exemption on the steel scrap, which was a big demand of the MSME sector for long. I think for the last 1 year, half year, we have been seeing this demand coming from the MSME sector, and they wanted this badly. So the government has accepted that demand. So this will, enable the MSME sector to import the goods, the raw materials at a lower cost. I'll not say significantly lower cost, but yes, at a lower cost. They have also taken the note of the fact that there are various anti-dumping duties on different materials, which probably have outlived their relevance in terms of protection to the domestic industry. But because they are there today, they are actually hitting the MSME sector badly. And therefore, they have withdrawn anti-dumping duty on from import of various products also. So that's one step that they have taken in terms of giving support to the MSME sector. Second, again, to give them more, liquidity and funding availability for the MSME sector, the ECLGS scheme has again been extended for another year. So this is again a good, initiative. So the MSME sector will definitely get, a 3% to 5%, depending on whether it is the MSME and export side of it, or some specific products which they are manufacturing. And so 3% to 5% benefit that they'll get on the interest subsidy and all. So that's also another good step that the government has taken to support the MSME sector in this time. So that's the normal continuation of the already existing avenues. Now, along with that, they have also introduced that 2 lakh crore additional credit guarantee scheme for the small and micro sector. So that's another effort by the government to allow funding and liquidity to the small and micro industries, and not only the medium sector industries which are getting benefited from the ECLGS scheme. But they have again introduced another 2 lakh crore of funding for the micro and small one. So the ECLGS is there. The credit cover under the guarantee cover under the ECLGS has also been increased by around 50,000 crore, and a total of 5 lakh crore credit line is extended as part of the ECLGS, and a 2 lakh crore additional benefit has been given in terms of availability of liquidity to the small and micro. So yes, the government has taken steps in terms of giving support to the MSME sector and ensuring that they come back on the track, and they again boost the economy, because we know that MSME sector is one of the most important sector for growth of the economy. Yes, the government has taken good steps there.
Thank you, Jatin, for actually taking our audience through all the incentives that have been brought on in relation to the MSME sector, and highlighting that just takes us to another sector that's also very crucial right now, especially post-pandemic. A lot of stress and importance has been given, which is the pharma sector. Although it's been crucial, but I guess post-COVID, a lot of things has happened that it has just highlighted the sector more, especially in terms of the kind of incentives they would require. So Rahul, if possible, can you take us through the impact of certain things that have brought out for the sector, such as withdrawal of custom duty and exemptions for import on specified drugs, medicine, life-saving drugs, and overall, how do you think the union budget has impacted the pharma sector?
Yeah, thanks, Sania, once again. So, if I say so, in terms of the custom duty aspect of it, it is not very favorable, so to say, considering the government has withdrawn some old 350 exemption notification, by this budget, and which has the impact, as we see, on some of the life-saving drugs, imports as well. So we see somewhere around 36 life-saving drugs which are part of list 3 are being impacted, where the duty impact has increased from 5 to 7.5%. And similarly, we see some 39 products which are there in list 4, where the duty impact is there increased from 7.5 to 10%. So, while most of these projects may have impact of higher rate of duty. Having said that, while the government has introduced the PLI scheme at the same time, both for APIs as well as for pharma formulations, so I think this whole amendment is going to be in sync with all those incentives, so that whatever government is spending in terms of giving incentive to manufacture and make in India for all those APIs and all those formulations. So I believe those steps are in quite synchronized as the government is taking those steps forward. And besides that, I feel the industry has been demanding some incentive around R&D, which I believe there are some incentive or subsidies shall be in pipeline, which we are expecting to come forward as the time progress, or some incentive, or maybe some kind of a duty neutralization by way of roadmap, which I believe which is in the pipeline and should see the light of the day in the months to come. So that's my take on those incentives for the pharma sector.
Thank you, Rahul, for actually summing it up for our audience. So I just wanted to take quick thoughts from each one of you again on, apart from what you have just shared, what have been the real key highlights, that our audience should also be aware of. So, Jatin, if you can just start on this.
Yeah, thanks, Anya. Again, talking from the indirect taxes side, there are various changes that the budget has brought in, and some of them are in favor of the industry in terms of introduction of further introduction of the IT interventions in terms of ease of doing compliance. One aspect I would like to mention is in relation to the special economic zones, wherein the government has taken a good step and announced that the SEZ Act will be replaced by a new code, wherein the states will be brought as partners in developing the enterprising and services hubs. So this will definitely help the existing SEZs in a long term. By converting them into larger economic hubs, wherein the activities which are taking place today exclusively under the control of central government and largely looking at the exports only, the states becoming partners with the central government in development of these hubs. This will go towards the fact that the activities which are taking place within these zones and going forward, these will be available for the domestic tariff area as well, with less of administrative hassles on the SEZs as they face today. Again, the government has mentioned that the entire administration of the SEZs will move to the common customs portal, and it will be purely IT-based, risk-based assessments that will be done for the administration of SEZs. So I think that is also one good step which has been taken by the government to say that there will be less, compliance burdens, less administrative restrictions on operations in these zones, and a lot of competitiveness will be brought in. The exports will get a good boost because of these measures. Also, the entry-exit of the units, the current units which are there in the SEZs and may want to exit because of whatever is the economic reason that they have, whether they want to go into the DTA with a less administrative aspect, or new entities who want to come into these already existing world-class infrastructure zones which are there. So I think all these things will be taken care of by these announcements and replacement of the SEZ Act with the new legislation. So let's see what is the new legislation, how they prescribe all these procedures. But I think it's a very good step. The second, I think, is on the customs side. Again, as Rahul had mentioned, that in the last budget they had mentioned that they'll take up all the existing customs exemptions which are there for ages, and they'll take it up for review. Now, what used to happen was that there were these exemptions, but the certainty in terms of till when the exemption is available, when it will be withdrawn, when it will be amended was always a concern. Now they took up 350 exemptions for review. They have withdrawn certain exemptions in this budget. And for most of the exemptions which are not required, they have given a sunset date of March 23. So now, the industry at large knows that what is going to happen after 1 year, and they can take real good steps in terms of doing the financial planning and the working capital planning in terms of the impacts that will be there. So that's another, I think, step which they have taken in terms of simplification of the tariff of the customs. Another, I would say, step that they have taken is that they have brought, they have actually aligned the customs tariff with the exemption notification. So the unconditional exemptions which were there in the customs, which will continue as it is, they have taken it out from the custom exemption notifications and made part of the customs tariff itself, so that we are not confused in terms of what is the actual effective duty rate and what is the the tariff rate. Is there a difference? What is the condition? Which notification is there? So we are not missing out on anything. So it's part of the tariff, and therefore it's simple and clear that this product is this rate. So that's the So these are some of the things that they have done. Again, on I would say the IGCR, the Import General, the entire regulation, IGCR regulation, has been revamped and made fully automated. So that's again, a direction in saying that the entire customs administration will be fully automated. And obviously, in past also they have taken a lot of steps in bringing IT intervention in the customs administration, like what they have done in the GST administration also. But I think the IGCR complete automation, the changes introduced in that is a very welcome step in that. On the GST side, again, they have taken certain measures to say that there will be changes in the compliance side. Now, some of them are not so very welcome steps. The new restriction that they have brought in Section 16 for availing the input tax credit is a big concern for the entire industry. I mean, for the last 1 year, we have been seeing that they introduced the first restriction in the last year budget, which actually got implemented in this January itself. And in this budget, they have again, made it much more stringent. And what they're saying is that as against the earlier practice when the vendor used to disclose the invoice in their GSTR1 return, and the recipient used to take the credit on the basis of the GSTR2A returns, irrespective of the fact, and without obviously the recipient having any mechanism to know that the vendor has actually made the payment of tax to the government or not. They brought in the restriction last year, which got implemented in this year, the 62AA clause, which said that you can take the credit now only on the basis of a statement that will be actually communicated by the government to the recipient. Now, they have gone a step further to say this statement will also tell which all services are ineligible for you for various reasons. So, till date, if you say, if I take an example of how Rahul as a company will be taking the input tax credit, I mean, is there any way available to Cipla to say that whether the vendor has actually gone and made the payment of tax, whether the vendor has actually filed the return for the last 2 months or 3 months or 4 months? So this is very difficult. I mean, obviously there are certain tabs which are there on the GST, but then on a regular basis, no business can actually keep a tab on that. Then again, we have the class of vendors who are filing quarterly returns. Now, how do we, actually go and do a supervision of whether they are doing everything on timely basis or not? So what the government has done, actually introducing further IT interventions into this whole ITC availment scenario. First, we will be dependent on a statement in GSTR 2B, which the government will be providing to us after close of every month. Plus, in that 2B itself, they will be telling us which all input services are ineligible because of the fact that the vendor has not filed the returns or vendor has not paid the taxes. Now, how do I deal with all that? Now, that's going to impact every company's working capital in a big way. Earlier, whatever input tax credit was available to me, we used to take it and adjust it against my output liability. But now, what will I do? I am absolutely and fully dependent on the government to tell me, what is the ITC which is available. And this, I think Rahul will agree with me, and Rahul can add on to that. That we saw this at the time of implementation of GST, that the most important pillar of GST is the seamless flow of input tax credit. And I think it's absolutely shattered now. The seamless flow has absolutely gone, and it's been, it has become now a very, very restrictive flow of input tax credit. So that's a very, concerning change that is happening in the availability of input tax credit in GST. Then, again, on the custom side, another problem that they have that we see in this budget is the amendment in the definition of proper officer. Most of the people dealing with indirect taxes know in last year the Supreme Court judgment was there in Canon India's case, wherein they said that DRI officer is not a proper customs officer, and therefore they cannot issue a notice and adjudicate it and proceed with the demand. Clearly, the government has gone ahead and amended the definition of proper officer in customs, and they have included even the audit officers and the revenue intelligence officers as the proper officer who can exercise the functions of a customs officer, obviously on being authorized by the senior officers and the board. But then we'll have to see that how this will pan out, because one is obviously going forward how this will pan out and how much new litigation and issues we'll see in the customs side. The DRI officers getting this power and the audit officers getting this power to issue notices and adjudicate the cases. But I think on the past aspect also, what assessment they've already done and Supreme Court had declared them invalid, what will happen to that? Whether current expansion of the definition of the term officer can actually impact the past assessments and make them valid or not. So that's another point that we'll have to see. So again, these are some of the major highlights, I will say, which are there. I think, one good thing that they have done is, again, in terms of bringing certainty to the aspects, the advanced rulings under the customs, and what they have said is that it will be valid for 3 years or till the time there is no change in the facts of law. Now, that's a good step, I think, to say that at least for 3 years there is a full certainty. After 3 years, I'll have to again, revisit that aspect to say that how do I take my liability forward. So that's another good aspect which is there. So, and there are various other procedural changes. There are smaller changes. Interest rates, have been the interest rate for availing and utilizing the wrong credit has been brought down to 18%. There are certain changes in terms of alignment of all these ITC restrictions. So I'm not going into each and every section number and all that, but I think these are the major highlights which are there on the indirect taxes front. Yeah.
Thank you, Jatin.
Probably now we can add on to the ITC aspect of how he feels. This is going to be.
You're right. I think, Jatin, the ITC part has been a bone of contentions. Because the government want to reduce or limit the credit, and the entire channel is supplier channel is not as equipped or technological advanced as large corporate like us are. So there's always some kind of a catch-up which we see on the vendor side and all, and we had to be at times catching up with them, kind of training them, kind of educating them, and kind of telling them how to comply in time. And at times we take strict measure as well, wherein we have to kind of make the payment only once they do compliance of GST. So we actually take the flag forward of the government and actually becomes the collector or the commissioners for the entire supply chain, for that matter. So and in the time to come, we are happy that the government is actually ahead of time, ahead of the corporates when it comes to automation. And that also will help us, put our house in order and the entire supply chain in order to comply with those legal changes and automation in the GST Tier 2A, 2B, and GST Tier 1 in the time to come. So having said that, the overall thought process with which the government is going for direct tax and indirect tax, what I feel is they want to just bring in more certainty, lesser litigation, and give right policy direction to the corporates and to the economy, so that people can accelerate on the policy certainty. So that's my key takeaway from the budget, and not tinkering with too many things. Yeah.
But I think another key proposal, apart from I think what has already been talked about, is this changes related to GIFT City. And I think since the time, I think the current government has taken office, even in the previous term, I think GIFT City has always received an attention. And I think there were four key proposals here in this budget, and which are, I think, quite far-reaching, I would say. On the face of it, they may just look at four proposals, but I think they have wider ramifications for the Indian economy and I think the Indian society as a whole. The one of those four changes is that the budget is proposed setting up of an international arbitration center at the GIFT City. Now, of course, we will need to see the operational provisions, whether it's implemented, and we have a fully functional international arbitration center. SIAC, Singapore International Arbitration Center, was functioning through the GIFT City for last 4 years, but wasn't really very successful because they could only do hearings, they couldn't really pass awards and didn't really take off. And as I think you would know and the audience would know, that Singapore International Arbitration Center has been a huge success, and I think a large portion, some 60-70% of all cases there are Indian connection. And that just means that if that large chunk of arbitration is going out of India, why not capture it in India? And I think it's a welcome step, provided they can really give the institutional framework and the infrastructural facility, because of which I think the Indian corporates or individuals go and arbitrate in Singapore. Second is, I think, allowing foreign universities to come and set up campuses in the GIFT City. Now, I think it's an extension of the national education policy, where they said, okay, they will get top 100 foreign universities to come and set up campuses in India. And I think we know that with the marks inflation, and I think with the exodus of the brighter, and I think at least people who have the capacity to pay to universities abroad, and that also reflects in terms of, I think, foreign exchange outflow. I think the largest heads for foreign exchange outflow in last couple of years, I would say, has been, I think, education remittances as well as travel and tourism. Now, I think given we being so dependent on, I think, foreign exchange, if we can control that aspect and get foreign universities to be in India, and our children, I think, can actually study and parents don't have to send foreign exchange outside, it's a win-win for everyone. And then other proposal is, I think, allowing vessel leasing to take place by units that are set up in the GIFT City. I think they committed aircraft to do it last year, and I think 20 companies, if I'm not wrong, have already set up shop in the GIFT City. So, and I think they've also given an exemption on royalty and interest payment. So again, I think broadening the framework, and last is the broadening the framework of, I think, financial participation. I think so they've allowed, I think they've added more financial instruments into the list of things that an offshore banking unit can do out of the GIFT City. So I think they've allowed PMSs, derivatives. So again, I think deepening the financial infrastructure, allowing, I think, international participants to come and operate out of GIFT City, and a large part of business that currently goes to Singapore. I think trying to capture that, but hopefully they will have to do several more things. But I think it's a good set of proposals if implemented well along with other things.
Very well said, Abhishek. GIFT City is obviously another thing that's been, government has been stressing on a lot and also promoting. Thank you everybody for actually taking time out for this and, taking us through the different aspects of the budget, like, the initiatives for Digital India, startups, MSME, and also the pharma sector. Thank you once again. Thank you everyone for taking time out.